Hey everyone, welcome to Titans Talk, the series dedicated to DC Universe's Titans. Now this past Friday was the release of the latest episode number 3 titled Origins, which is somewhat appropriately named, as we do get to see a little bit of flashbacks of young Dick Grayson interacting with Bruce Wayne, or at least his early days at the Wayne Mansion, or Wayne Manor rather. We also get to see a little bit of Rachel's past, or at least delve into what happened when she was a child, things like that, as well as we get a little bit more of Starfire, aka Corey, involved. Now, if you see my review of episode 2 titled Hawk and Dove, I absolutely loved that episode. I was going off of a super high. Everything in that episode I thought was really, really great. And then episode 3 comes along, I really want that momentum to continue, but instead it kind of did the opposite and really slammed on the brakes, fully stopping that momentum from the previous episode. And this episode was okay, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't quite get me the same way that the last episode did. Now, I'm not sure if it was the lack of action in this episode, although there are some action scenes, especially revolving Starfire, where she does actually fight a couple of police officers, as well as use her fire abilities. I don't really technically know what her abilities are called. It looks like fire in the episode. To basically blow up one of the members of the nuclear family that we introduced in the last episode. There is action in the episode, just not a lot, especially compared to Hawk and Dove. Hawk and Dove, there was so much badass happening every single time there was somebody in costume. This one, there's actually no costume whatsoever. We don't even see Robin in costume. We see no one in costume. Just regular street clothes for the most part. It just kind of felt dull and boring for the most part. It just never really got to the point like Hawk and Dove did, and I think that's in due part to the writing, but also in due part of the lack of action and really great things going on. This was more of like a build-up, trying to get the team together, because this is the first time we're going to have Robin, Raven, and Starfire interacting, and even there's a point where Beast Boy is sort of in close proximity. So they are very much in the close same area. They're just not quite interacting to the point of a team yet. And I find that really disappointing, because this is now the 3rd episode of a show called Titans, and having an episode released every single week where you hope that they come together, but for some reason there's just something that's keeping them from coming together, it's a very slow burn. And I feel like having it be an episode coming out every week for that kind of slow burn, it kind of hurts the show a lot. I would much rather if they just released the entire season all at once. That way people could binge and get through these slow moments a lot faster and not have to wait week after week to try and get the actual Titans back together. Now, in terms of positives for the episode, I would have to say Anna Diop's Starfire was hands down the best part of the entire episode. She really carried a lot of it in terms of story, as well as just interaction with the character, which is great because we really didn't get a whole lot of her. Actually, we didn't get her at all in the last episode, and we got some of it, but it was kind of confusing in the first episode. So she definitely comes back into this episode and gets a lot more of an introduction, or at least a lot more action involvement than she did in the previous episodes. So I was able to get a little bit more of a better judge on how I like her. I actually like this version of Starfire a lot. I'm not really familiar with Starfire as a character, but she's sort of typically the naive one, the very soft, gentle type, but has that sort of angry side. Now this version, she's sort of some type of, I don't know if it's a secret agent necessarily, or if she's just supposed to be having that amnesia where she just doesn't remember where she's from, if she's in a different body. I really don't know what they're going for here, but I feel like because she is a little bit more of a badass, she is a much more stronger character, stronger person rather, I feel like it's going to make her a lot more interesting in the dynamic of the Titans, not just be always that sweetheart who's always being like, oh, are you okay, things like that. She's still kind of worries about people, as based on how her interaction with other people have been, which hasn't been a whole lot, but especially with Robin, which Starfire and Robin have had a relationship in the past, in cartoon, and I believe in comic form as well. But I just think that there's something here that's going to be a lot more interesting and to watch, rather than just the sweet Starfire that we all know and love. I just think that Anna Diop is going to bring the badassness to this character that it actually kind of needs, especially for a darker show like Titans. Now, in this episode, Starfire actually builds a little bit of a relationship with Raven, which is really good and kind of builds off of what happened in the last episode. Now, Raven and Dove had a pretty positive relationship and good sort of, I don't want to call it mentorship, but she definitely had a great influence on Raven. Now, of course, if you've seen the last episode, spoiler, Dove does get hurt, so she's no longer available to sort of interact with Raven, and plus Raven got kidnapped. So Starfire ends up finding her, saving her essentially, and they actually have a really great relationship and dynamic, kind of in the same way that Raven and Dove had. There's just sort of a kinship there. Even though they don't know each other, they're both kind of confused and don't even know about their own past, but there's just a great relationship there that it's going to be a positive relationship by the looks of it. Like Raven and Starfire can really interact with one another and actually have that positive influence on each other, even if something bad is happening around them. For instance, they're in a diner in this episode, and Raven kicks the guy's ass, or excuse me, not Raven, Starfire kicks the guy's ass. Raven just goes sit in the car, and she just comes back out with waffles, and she's like, I guess these were complimentary since I beat this guy up. So I thought that was actually kind of funny, and like their just dynamic is really great, and I hope they continue to build on that in future episodes, that they really do have that great relationship and those positive female influences in each other, especially for Raven, because she really needs it with her darkness that's going on. So I really hope they continued that. I do, however, have to say my concern about Starfire, and that's going to be her story, because based on how it is, she has the amnesia that she doesn't really remember who she is or why she's after Raven or looking for Raven. Now, based on the episode, she does find like a sort of storage container that does have information about Raven that she's been searching for. She's like, I don't really know why I've been looking for this girl, but obviously there's some sort of connection there. My biggest concern is that they're going to go with a very cliche and kind of a boring story where she's like actually supposed to be trying to kill Raven or like assassinate her type of thing, and then ends up becoming friends because they have the amnesia. I feel like that's really not a great storyline to follow. Maybe some of you guys would think it would be interesting. I just feel like it's kind of bad because it's sort of that we're friends now. Oh, I was meant to kill you, but we'll be friends anyway sort of storyline that I feel like we've seen before in other things. I just hope that they actually make her sort of interesting with her amnesia and not necessarily that, she just was this assassin who lost her memory and now she's friends with the girl that she was trying to kill. I don't really like that storyline myself, but if they do end up going that way, at least if they can write it in a good way, maybe it would be interesting. Another positive that I can take away from the episode, and as I mentioned earlier, is the flashbacks that Dick has to his early days at Wayne Manor. I actually like these scenes a lot, although they kind of felt like they didn't mix well at certain times in the narrative of the story. I did like how they sort of told that story, even though we can kind of take a guess that we've kind of seen that before with his origins in his early days, but this one he's a little bit more rambunctious, a little bit more rebellious in stealing cars and sort of running away, things like that. And it kind of explains what his connection is with the Porsche that he always drives in this series, that he actually boosted it from Bruce Wayne's garage when he was a kid. So I think that was kind of nice little connection there, I guess, but why we need to connect to the Porsche specifically, I don't know. But I really liked his early days. I feel like when he sort of jumped out of a window during the episode and like did a flip with the tree, yes, that's nice because it kind of connects back to his circus days. But at the same time, because of the sort of movement they had to do, they had to like CGI it, and it just didn't really look great in my opinion. But to each his own, I guess. I mean, I like that the interaction even happened. Now, in terms of him being at Wayne Manor, there is Bruce Wayne involved. However, he's typically an ominous, dark character in the background that we can't even see what he looks like, other than it's a guy. But I think that's a good positive thing to go off of here because, number one, they aren't able to cast Bruce Wayne as of yet, or at least tell us who he is or show us what he looks like, probably based on the movies and things that are happening there. So they can't really use a whole lot of that character, although they do have the rights to the character because this is from DC Universe and all that stuff. So, at least I imagine they have the rights to the character. I hope so. But anyway, I feel like him being in the background in that dark character that we can't see is good, because if we did show Bruce Wayne, if we did show Batman as of right now, that would be taking away from the Titans show itself and Robin's storyline, and I feel like that would be a big, big negative. Everyone would be so detracted by Batman. Look what Batman looks like. Look what how Batman acted. Look how Batman's doing. Who's playing Batman? That would completely take away and defeat the purpose of Titans and Robin, the character, Dick Grayson. All would be completely gone. So I actually like that they didn't show him. I do hope that they continue to have him in the background for flashbacks. Based on how the episode goes again, Robin is going to be introduced into the Batcave and maybe getting his suit, things like that. I hope we get to see young Robin in action. If Batman is there, that's great, but I want him to stay in the background, maybe have like a silhouette type of situation like this episode had, maybe have him in the cowl or something like that, where we just can't see him, because I feel like that's really going to drive the episode. And we know obviously that Batman exists because there's Robin. Robin doesn't exist without Batman. But having Batman there and sort of having that presence, I think, is more important than having him actually involved. Again, because the narrative of the story doesn't need Batman. We need the rest of the Titans, mainly Robin, to be able to like bring them together, things like that. So I liked what they did there, and I definitely appreciated that. Now, something I'm neutral about in this episode is Beast Boy. To be honest, I'm going to say neutral, but I'm leaning on disappointed. Now, Beast Boy, this is episode number 3. Beast Boy has had a total of about 5 to 10 seconds in the first episode and about 20 to 30 seconds in this episode. He does interact with Raven a little bit at like a roller rink / arcade that they go to for a little while. Starfire and Raven go to. He does see them there and kind of flirts with Raven, but it's in a really awkward stage or like awkward interaction. Now, I'm guessing that Beast Boy and Raven are both still fairly young, in their teens, so I mean, they're probably pretty awkward as it is, but this interaction is really awkward. Now, Beast Boy goes by the name of Gar in this episode. I think that's sort of his human name or whatever you want to call it. That's how he introduces himself to Raven. I really don't know how to feel about Beast Boy yet. It's hard to say. I mean, he's only had seconds. He's probably had in total less than a minute of overall screen time in the entire series so far, in the first 3 episodes. I think he's one of the ones that they're really holding back, but based on previews for next week, he is going to be a bigger part, based on the previews. However, he'd kind of been teased before. He was in the preview of this episode as well, but he's only interacting very, very little. And I have that concern that they're just going to keep holding him back, and then at some point it's just going to be like really aggravating that they're not even giving us Beast Boy. They're just showing us teases to get us to watch the episode, hoping that he gets involved, and he doesn't. But it looks like based on the next one, he will actually get involved, but then again, fingers crossed, because we don't really know. They could just be using clips of the 1.5 minutes that he's actually in the episode. Hopefully not, but let's cross our fingers. So essentially, I was really disappointed in the episode. It was an okay episode. It wasn't great. Again, I think this was a lack of action and a writing issue, and they should have just released the whole season. If they're going to do such a slow burn like this, at least let us binge through it, get to all that good stuff that I'm hoping that they're holding back in future episodes. It's just a rough patch, but you know, it's hard to say. Hopefully they can get back on track, especially with my love for the last episode. I just want them to get back to that. I want them to get the Titans involved. I want to see some great action, some great story. And this episode just kind of didn't deliver that. It sort of teased it, but it's not quite there yet. And for that reason, the overall grade that I have to give Titans Episode 3, a grade of a C. Like I said, this episode did have some positives, but it just really wasn't enough to really say I enjoyed this episode. It had little things here, kind of like the first episode, sort of nuggets, but it just didn't really get me excited for what's coming next, other than the preview for next week, which is appropriately titled Doom Patrol. Now, I find this one's going to be kind of interesting, and I really can't wait because DC Universe is coming out with their own Doom Patrol series. So we're going to find out some interesting things. Hopefully, they'll be the same characters as they are in different series. I don't really know much yet. Based on what I can tell, some of the characters are the same, some are not, in terms of actors, so we'll see how that goes. But make sure you tune in next week so when I can review episode 4 titled Doom Patrol. Really looking forward to that and finding out more about them, as well as finding out how it's going to be with the Doom Patrol series that they're going to have. A lot of big questions there. But other than that, that's all I have for this episode of Titans Talk. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.